Guys, obviously we're here for Cosplay Photography and Posing 101. How many of you actually are cosplayers? So I know everybody's kind of dressed down.
Definitely not.
Definitely not a cosplayer.
How many of you
All of you
are
are.
photographers?
Excellent.
And how many of you enjoy raising your hands in a panel? Yay!
Should be all.
Everyone gets an opportunity.
So, I mean, we're gonna try to go over the things that we know. I'm Larcy from Legend of Larcy. I'm the saltiest cosplayer you're ever gonna meet. So
She's like an ocean.
don't do anything that I'll hold a grudge against, because that grudge will never die.
She's Louise. What an intro!
Hey, you know, it's funny.
It is funny.
Okay.
You're wonderful.
You're good.
After you.
It's like the tears of your enemies.
Yeah, absolutely, 100.
At least it's tears and not blood.
I am Joe-Fake Cosplay. I just like to cosplay for fun. And pose and make bags. I like to make bags and things and props. But yeah.
Everyone's like, And I am Mick the Satyr. I am a cosplayer. I am a VTuber. I am an illustrator. I am a LARPer. I am a friend.
What else are you?
Doing all the things.
I'm also a teacher, but many of you already heard that. But Lynn's like, Hixner on the Ichorte. I have been cosplaying for 10 years. I have been costuming and conventioning for 20 years because I started my first convention at 1. I'm kidding, don't do that. That's my bit. You guys are gonna do that joke over and over again every
That was a
seamless
run there. Yeah.
Seamless.
I feel like
you
I
went
was
in with
supposed to
energy
say
and
more.
that.
Yeah.
When did you actually start cosplaying and going to Comic-Con?
Oh, 20 years ago. That number is accurate. What's not accurate is how old I was when I started.
Never ask a girl how old she is.
1 billion.
Unicorns donate.
Unicorns
I
don't
am
age.
20.
Wow, you don't look a day over 12.
Thank you. I'd like to think that it's the contouring you did,
But the reality is she's not wearing makeup. Shall we get started?
I spent 30 minutes on my face, okay?
Shall we get
Okay.
started?
Yes.
I'm gonna push a button.
All right. So, just so you guys are all aware, everyone can model. Yay!
Even me! Yay, everybody!
I just want to remind everyone that cosplay is for everyone. There are no limits. Do what you love. If you love a character and you're a girl and they're a boy, do it. Vice versa. Who cares? You love it and that's what matters. So just like your friendly disclaimer.
You're the epic cosplayer in the picture. I wanted to read some of it. You did
Oh,
a great
go
job
ahead.
reading the
Okay.
thing. No,
I would like-
we have so much to do. This is like the least important slide right now.
My favorite thing about cosplay photography is just capturing that moment in time where you just feel like you are the badass cosplay that you've always wanted to be. So I too am a photographer. I'm a little bit newer to the scene, but I feel like as a cosplayer I kind of have a step up against people who are just entering into photography like with nothing. I know how I like to look, I know how I like other people to look, so that kind of gives me, I think, an edge when it comes to cosplay modeling.
Would you say you are an artist with a vision?
I'm an artist with a vision.
Cool.
And
you
she
have
doesn't
eyes.
mean the Genshin.
Wait, I am completely dumb about
Yeah, the
Genshin.
two of us are sitting here like Genshin.
They're Genshin illiterate.
Everybody knows about Genshin except for us.
We're the only
We know
ones.
nothing.
No. I know a couple things, but I haven't played it.
I am the Jon Snow of the Genshin Impact.
I know nothing.
All right.
So when it comes down to it, where do you start with cosplay photography? Usually, most people start with social media, but there are also community groups. And I've actually found that it's fun to meet people at conventions. You see a photographer following or walking around, I mean, ask questions, you know. There's also local photography groups. You can find those obviously via social media. Some are a little more prevalent than others.
There are also and this is going to sound obvious in hindsight, but community colleges and community outreach programs that are specific to hobbies and hobbyists to help them learn more about the skill. So again, it's going to sound obvious, but enrolling in a community college program is a great way to meet people, cheaply learn more about the medium that you're getting into, and you can learn more about like the theory and the art that goes into photography itself. That made me sound smart just now.
Oh, did you make this? Cool. All right, so pre-shoot questions. When you're looking for a photographer, what are some things to look for?
So this is from both the cosplayer end and the photographer end. We're going to be doing a lot of code switching between cosplayer and photographer, and we will do our best to like say, this is from a cosplayer's perspective, this is from a photographer's perspective, this is from a both, and now we're a Venn diagram circle. We're going to do our best to help keep that close, sane, and obvious. If we don't, please let us know, like, oh, hold on, what are you talking about now? And we'll slow down for us. This first question, or questions, is for both cosplayers and photographers when you're looking to establish a photo shoot, whether it is at a convention or whether it is off-site at what we would refer to as a location shoot. The benefit of a location shoot, of course, being that you don't have a bagillion people and you are going to a specific location that matches your cosplay. Exhibit A, a specific location that matches the cosplay. It was the middle of winter and I was cold. You don't see, but there's ice in them waters. Actually you do see, there's snow. See that white stuff? That's not the reflection, that'd be snow.
I mean, that's fake snow.
So who wants to read the questions? No, it's legit, oh my god, I'm
Photoshop.
Oh, are you talking about the snow in the background on the rocks?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was talking about the overlay.
Oh no, I was talking about the snow on the rocks.
Different panel.
Anyway.
First question, are they reliable and do they have a good reputation? This, I feel like, is the most key thing when you are a cosplayer looking for a photographer. You want to make sure that they have credentials. And you can find out their credentials by asking your friends and
Or
asking
Google.
the community. I mean,
If you can Google search, sometimes there'll be like Reddits, it'll be like, I had a really bad experience at a con with this well-known photographer. That's especially, the reputation is especially for working with someone like a really big name that you're about to spend a lot of money on. Ooh, I see a question already. Yeah, what's up?
Hi. So I actually was wondering, since I'm getting into photography,
Yes.
how do you like really build that reputation where people can actually trust you if you're struggling to find people that are willing to, get
I would
photos of you?
say start at cons and wander around with your camera.
Hall photography is the best way to build relationships with other cosplayers and just like meet people. And then as you become more familiar, some of my photographer friends that I have met by just doing hall photos, as all of you are now super familiar with. We are literally at a con where people are taking photos in the halls. And then what will happen is a photographer will say, hey, I'm doing some photos later, I'm going around taking photos of people, would you be interested in doing a shoot on site? And if the answer is like, yeah, why not, then you can start building a rapport. And the folks that I stay in touch with are the folks that I was vibing with on site in that safe environment of we are in a public
Exactly.
setting.
It can really help to build a cosplayer's confidence when they're working with someone they don't really know and that their friends don't know if they're in a big public area, just until they get comfortable working with you and feel confident with that.
Over time, I hate to say a lot of photography reputation is built from just like pounding the pavement, being that going to the cons and initially offering free photos for folks and just asking like, hey, especially we've got some beautiful garden areas in the front of the hotel area. I'm sure you've seen a lot of photographers shooting in that general vicinity. Those are great places to be like, hey, I would love to do like a quick shoot with you if you're interested or if you have time. Are you free later today or are you free now? Is that something you'd be interested in? Like a no pressure thing. That's the way that you build rapport and that's the way you build a community. And that's the way ultimately you build reputation.
Unfortunately, it just takes time. You gotta get yourself out there, and then when people get hyped about your photos too, they start sharing it, and then you kind of get spread around. Perfect example is me and Gilded Stitch. On Friday, we're walking around with our cameras. We had 3 paid shoots, but we offered everybody we encountered to do some haul shots. And that's how we've been building our reputation, other than us shooting we shoot each other regularly, so.
Speaking of paid shoots, is the person that you're working with, are they within your budget? This is mostly for cosplayers thinking about hiring a photographer. More often than not, it is a cosplayer hiring a photographer, not a photographer hiring a cosplayer. I'm sure some of you are nodding your head like, yes, I've seen it, yeah. Many photographers will advertise on social media, I will be at such and such con, and here are my convention rates for 15-minute slots, hour slots, 30-minute slots, here's my group rates, yada yada. Is that person in your budget? Because photographers take their photos and they do a lot of editing, they do a lot of work. All of their work happens at a con. All of their work happens post-con. If you like their work, you should pay an artist what they're worth. If you are looking to get like a world-famous photographer, like a wedding photographer to shoot your stuff, you got to budget for that. You got to be prepared for that.
I think we touched upon this already. Like, what kind of shoot are you looking for? Convention, on location, prices will vary. Location shoots are always way more expensive.
You know how much gas costs right now? Because I do.
Travel costs and sometimes food costs too. I know of some people who have been, some photographer friends who have been flown to other countries to do photography. So, and they had their way paid. It was nice. They went to Iceland.
I was thinking you were
impressed.
thinking of Iceland folk.
And
Yeah.
there's a couple others I know of, but that was
Yeah.
one that came to mind.
Mhm.
What's their portfolio like? Do you like their style of photography? Every photographer has a different vision, a different art style. So if you think of it as like somebody who does art like comic books, everybody distinctly has their own drawing style. Photography is the same thing. So the best thing to do when you're shopping around is to keep in mind that one photographer is not going to do the work like another photographer. So you have to be thorough when you're looking at portfolios and make sure that you like the way that that person shoots. Like, I shoot with one person who does specifically action stuff,
Yeah.
and then I shoot with another person who does specifically glamour stuff. So depending upon what I'm wearing, how I want to be portrayed, I choose between these different people and the way that they go about their photography and setting up a scene, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and
Knowing
another
that.
thing too is like, look at the kinds of cosplays they're shooting. Some people shoot really beautiful photos of like ball gowns or dresses or, you know, kind of softer, gentle things, whereas other people may want to shoot something that's more prop heavy or armor. So look at the style of what work that they've done, because a lot of times if you go to someone for a specific thing that might be outside of what they do, you might not get the
get a
kind of look
subpar
you
product,
want.
exactly. Everyone has a strength, everyone has a weakness.
Red flag question. Are they safe to work with? This is where you really want to dig into your community and your friends and social media, because not every photographer is a photographer. And I just want to put that disclaimer out there, because anybody can walk around with a camera.
This is
Okay.
especially important to know for your like bodily safety and then your own comfort level. You should always come to a shoot aware of what your own limitations are, whether they're like someone is asking you if you can do a high kick and you know you can't, you should be able to advocate, I can't do that, and nor do I feel comfortable doing that. But that's also similar for like if someone wants you to do something that's even vaguely suggestive that's past your line, you need to be aware of where your lines are so that you can advocate for yourself, because you don't want to have to think on the fly, am I comfortable with this? Or worse, afterwards when you get your photos back, be like, I am not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So these are things to just keep in mind. You want to make sure that the person that you're working with is a person that you feel safe enough to say, no thank you to that, or this is where my lines are, please respect that, and know that they will.
And another thing too is that when you're working with a photographer, you really want to find something you'd be comfortable with. If you got photos back that you were very uncomfortable with, that it would be someone who would respect you saying, I'd like you to not share these anywhere. So unfortunately, it is a thing that happens sometimes, and it's good to be aware of it.
And also, if they tell you you cannot bring someone with you, that's also a big red flag. You should always be able to bring a friend when you are
Yeah.
doing photography.
Especially if you're working with someone that you're less familiar with or someone you have never worked before. I recommend always use the buddy system just in case. They're
Yeah.
probably amazing, they're probably great, they're probably phenomenal, just in case. It's very important that you feel comfortable and you feel safe no matter what. Similarly, if you're a photographer and you're working with a cosplayer you've never worked before, bring a buddy too. Let the cosplayer know. For my sense of security and safety, I'm going to be bringing a person with me. That person might be assisting me for my shoot, but I want you to know in advance. Communication in advance is going to be your best friend regardless. Cute.
Wow, we're thorough.
Cute. Photography style. We did touch on this. Different photographers do have different styles. Some folks are very good at natural light outdoor style. Some folks are very good at indoor. If you're a photographer, let me just remind you, your best times to shoot portraiture are when it is overcast and you are not dealing with harsh shadows on the skin. Harsh shadows look great for art, but not for portraiture, and that's what we're doing.
So, example, action shot is my Leafeon with a K-flip, and then our friend, A Piece of Light, does glamour. So this is Mink and I as Goldine and Sea King.
You look so forlorn.
Ah, now I see it.
Now you can't unsee it.
We do a lot of Pokemon stuff.
You do.
I'm a big giant Pokemon fan myself.
Right, molto bene.
So communication. You want to establish a good relationship with a photographer you're comfortable with. Communication is where you start. Once you've chosen one, you got to communicate what you want, where you want to go, how you want to go about things. We talk so much that I feel like we talked about everything before we got there.
So when you're communicating with a photographer too, one of the first things that really helps to kind of talk with them about is what you can expect to get back, and that make sure that that's aligned with what you want going into it. Because sometimes you may find out a photographer is only going to send back a certain number of photos, and you maybe thought it was going to be more. And if you ask all of these things in advance, you can really iron out exactly what you're getting before you spend money on it and time getting into the cosplay. Make sure it's what you want for that.
And also, this ties back into budget. Make sure that you can pay what they're asking.
Yeah.
You should always pay an artist what they're worth.
One of the things that I like to communicate with photographers in advance is, what am I cosplaying as? And what kind of poses or inspiration points am I looking to achieve? So if I have a vision, I'm an artist, so sometimes I'll like draw a quick sketch and be like, I want this pose in this sort of environment, so if we can like get at this, that'd be great. If I'm doing a recreation of like an anime or a television show or a movie, I will grab like still frames and say like, I want to recreate this moment, or I have this vision in my head. For a costume I was wearing earlier today, I communicated with my photographer. I don't know exactly what I want, but I know I want stone. I want stonework in this color. Do you know of like places that have like this kind of stonework? And the two of us like went back and forth and figured stuff out. And we had worked before closely together, so I could reference like, hey, the photos that we took of this cosplay or that you took of this cosplayer, I want to recreate those kinds of moments. So it meant that by the time I got to site, our limited amount of time was spent doing the work and not talking about what kind of poses are you thinking of. And don't worry, from the cosplayer perspective, we are going to be talking about posing and what sorts of things to keep in mind as we go. So do hang on to your hats. I don't want to give away too much.
And last point before I move on, you should always communicate what you're cosplaying to the photographer so that they can do a little bit of homework for you. Because not every photographer knows what you're cosplaying as. So if they have a reference to go by, they can look up things that they can do in their style. So it's just a good rapport. Oh.
Etiquette.
Etiquette, yeah! Your computer does not like me.
No, it's okay. It's because it's really delicate on the trigger.
So etiquette goes both ways. Be punctual or even show up early. Be polite to your photographer. They're doing a lot of work, just as much work as you are.
Be polite to your cosplayer. They're doing a lot of work and it took them a long time to get into that costume.
Come prepared with your material. Show up put together. If you want a good photo, you want to make sure your cosplay is pressed, wrinkle-free. You've
really
got
helps
everything.
to iron and press things.
You want to have your wig where it's at because unfortunately, and we all have like costume failures, you'll be in the middle of the shoot and your wig will slip and then thereafter your face, and it happens. You will look strained and worried even though you think you don't. So if you have like a malfunction in the middle of your shoot, it kind of reflects your photos thereafter. So it's just better to come prepared and be comfortable in your costume, have it the way you want, so you don't have to worry from there on out.
Similarly, as a photographer, be prepared, like have all of your ish together. You know, don't get to the location if you're doing a location shot and be like, oh, I forgot my other lens in my bag and we've got to go back, because that person spent money for your time and it seems kind of cheap if they get less of that time. Seems an obvious thing, but again, important to have that double checking.
Yeah, so be aware of time. And last but not least, pay your photographer. Or if the photographer is paying you, pay your cosplayer.
And a quick thing to mention as well, if you are a photographer, as a cosplayer, it's always nice if the photographer sees something that looks like it's coming off wrong or something like that, to say something. And you do want to ask as well permission before you adjust anything for a cosplayer too.
Before you physically go into someone. For
Yeah.
example, there's a hair right now on Larcy's wig that is a little cute, and there is a difference between me approaching Larcy in the face, exactly, versus me saying, hey Larcy, I noticed you've got a hair out of place. Would you like to adjust it or would you like my help?
They made it worse.
Actually, it did make it better, so like, yeah.
But in general, that really helps the cosplayer feel comfortable with being there, and consent is important.
Let's get started.
Posing! Yay!
Is this Parasect and the other restaurant?
And Paris,
Yeah, this is a good day for us.
This was a terrible day for us.
Except.
What are you talking about? This was a terrible day. We hated every minute of it. We ripped those costumes off of our bodies and it stayed in my car for 3 months because I did not want to look at it.
To be fair though,
As I do.
it was like high foliage last fall. And the shots were beautiful, but we were miserable.
And I look it too.
And your face, well, you were meant to look miserable.
I
Let's be
was.
real.
I look ratchet.
So going in to your photo shoot, know your character. Or at least, if you're cosplaying something that you're not familiar with, do a little bit of homework so you got some poses. My favorite is Rock Lee. A dropout will beat a genius through hard work. It's the power of youth. I did a Passion Rock Lee like 5 years ago. And my friend, A Piece of Light, and I wandered around this really hot park pretending that I was drunk. It was a lot of
It was
fun.
really easy because, when you're overheated.
Yeah,
basically,
you
that's
walk like you're
the posing.
drunk.
Yeah.
Being really in character can help bring a lot of life to photos. So it's something to think about.
And you can see that love reflected in the photos. When you really truly are passionate about a character, you will exude joy during your photo shoot. I guarantee it.
So both of these photos that you see here are examples of photos that go beyond just, can I take a picture of me in my costume and I'm standing. They set a mood, they set a tone, because both of the folks who are behind the camera have a vision of I am going to focus to bring out this particular attribute about the character. And both the cosplayers are really playing the characters. They are acting out an emotion, a feeling, a something. And so what it does is we transition from, I'm just taking a picture of my costume because I want to show the hard work I did in my cosplay, or I want to show how cool I am, to now we're all creating art together. Look, more art.
Yay! This is me. Hi!
I'm the boy.
But I am also the boy.
Wait,
Just so we're clear.
Oh yeah, I forgot that the characters. I think they all look so.
I know. The Near universe is very, everybody has white hair and everybody is wicked pretty.
It's true. It's true.
This is actually one of my favorite universes to photograph because there's just so much mood. And if anybody's familiar with Nier or Nier Automata, you know where I'm going with this, okay? I beat the game at 1 in the morning and then I sobbed till like 6 a.m., okay?
There are a lot of media that people cosplay from that have a specific aesthetic, and it's very helpful to communicate ahead of time, like, we are gonna 100% kill nailing this aesthetic. We're going for this sort of like mood, this sort of, you know, for this example, there's very like deep emo-y moods that we're trying to invoke, something really like something that you're going to need to spend a while and maybe like a couple of YouTube videos processing the lore of. Like that's what we want. That's the vibe.
With our 2B and 9S, we sought out industrialized areas because the entire premise is like a post-apocalyptic world.
It's not quite as bad as when we got into your car and we drove around like the grossest parts of Maine, and I was like, I want to find the grossest construction spot. I see a dumpster. Over there by the dumpster. Let's go to the dumpster.
This did happen. I photographed
Quite
her
literally, I was
in
like,
a dumpster.
make it fashion, but in a dumpster.
It is also important to like make sure before you go take photos anywhere that the area is safe.
Yes.
That's always a big one.
Super.
Because sometimes a place looks very aesthetic and then you get out and realize maybe that's not a great place to be
Broken
standing.
glass,
in
new location.
I know my favorite is my Nier photo up here, the one with the sword. I actually hit the lighting just right. The
There
sun
are two
had
of
just
them.
barely
Oh.
gone down, and there
The
was a
far one.
thunderstorm. So the lighting really hit the mood of the game, which is kind of like it. It's also sort of pre-apoc. Like the world has been destroyed, but it's not because there's like luscious forests. I don't know.
We'll YouTube the lore later.
Yeah, you guys know.
So I just wanted to use these two photos that I had taken to kind of show as well the difference of tone you can get by conveying that with your photographer ahead of time. The Espion photos that I took, I really wanted them to be kind of mysterious and have big tone differences in them, you know, light and dark, because that's kind of an Espion aesthetic. And I wanted them to be kind of soft and gentle. So I specifically, ahead of time, went through some of the Facebook pages for the convention I was going to, and the hashtag on Instagram, and I really tried to find photographers whose style I thought would really work. And then I reached out to some friends I knew who had worked with them or knew people who worked with them to get their input on, you know, whether they felt comfortable working with that photographer. And then on the other side, I've got a character that's really energetic, and if you know My Hero Academia at all, Kirishima is all full of energy, and he's a good boy.
Why didn't you
And I
punch
wanted
the wall?
stronger power poses with that. So I've tried to find a photographer I thought who would really capture that style well.
Very in character.
All right, rule of 3. This is something I like to convey and carry off when I am at a convention specifically, when I am doing hall photography. And this is the wisdom that I shall pass on to you. When you are in cosplay and so you're passing by and someone says, "Can I take your picture?" I like to have in my head 3 poses that I'm going to pull from at any given time for that character. And it's going to sound super vain, but maybe the night before you put on your costume or you just pretend you have your costume on and you hit those poses in a mirror to make sure that you have your angles right, your scenes on straight, everything looks good. Because the idea is that at any given time you can just Rolodex through one of those. So when someone says, "Can I take a picture?" you say, "Sure," and then you hit one of those poses.
Strike a pose.
It is wonderful to do by yourself. It really like helps you slip into like a mood. Like when I'm doing archery with this particular character, this is Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West, great games. I had a couple of like, these are my poses, this is the things, like boom, boom, boom. I can sit into one of those very easily. I know what they look like. I know that even if it's someone I've never worked with, the photo is going to come out looking cool. That being said, like, it's really cool to do that kind of rule of 3 with a group. Because when you have folks who are like in a collective, and I know some of you have probably cosplayed a group concept before, and then what inevitably happens is someone says, can I take your picture? I've done this before, where I've established, okay, here's pose 1, here's pose 2, here's pose 3, and then I did it with Savage when we were, when I was Ed Elric and he was Alphonse from Full Metal Alchemist. I would just yell, 1, and then we would hit pose 1. Or I'd be like 3, we'd hit pose 3. And it always meant that very quickly we could collaborate and coordinate. So the person taking our photo was like, oh, okay, like, and we're out. Like, oh, we're not causing a whole, like, artery buildup. Like, okay, we good.
A
we
bottleneck.
Good. That's the
there we
word,
go.
a
There you go.
bottleneck.
On the opposite end of that too, it's always a bummer when you get your cosplay all on and you go down to the floor and someone wants 3 photos, so they start out and take one, you're like, yes, I got this. They're like, how about a second one? You're like, okay, I'll make this work, and then you turn and try and make it work, and then they're like, okay, one more, and you don't have a pose thought out, and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. So
It's
it helps
also
to
a
be
bummer
prepared.
when you get like haul shots back and you didn't have any poses in mind and you feel like you look like garbage in a cosplay that you love. That's rough.
I've never had a photographer in the hallway ask for more than 3 photos, or like more than 3 poses. Usually it'll be like new pose, and then at like most people it'll be like 1 shot, we out. Some folks with the nice cameras will be like, would you like another pose? And then sometimes you get them asking if you have a 3rd pose, and I've never had anyone say more than that. So this is me min-maxing for you. 3 and you out.
All right, let's go over some don'ts before we get into the do's.
Dude.
So we'll start with stiff postures. When you strike a pose, you don't want to be clenching yourself. It shows. Like if you hold things out straight, if you pull things in tight, it just looks like, wow. Would you like to stand up and
I did some demo.
Oh, okay.
I was doing it off here.
Like you want to relax, like take a deep breath and just let your pose flow out. You can see when somebody is strained. It shows in your face, it shows in your body, and nobody likes strained photos. I mean, you want to feel good.
The 2 of us have to just do the poses examples. Do you want to do the next one? The staring one?
This is my favorite though, because that's me. Like that's
Deer
my
in the headlights.
wild-eyed. That's what I do.
When someone catches you and you have food halfway to your mouth and they say, can I take a picture? And you're like, ah!
Or if the
That was my food for
photographer
you.
has the sun to your face because that gives you the brightest face, and you've been staring into the sun a lot and your eyes are watering, please, just do a 3, 2, 1 count. You just ask your photographer, can you count to 3 when you're about to take the picture? So they line up the shot, you have your eyes closed, and then they say 1, 2, 3. You open your eyes for 3, and then you're good. Your eyes are fresh, and you're not burning from the sun. It's also good for family photos, just in case you needed
Mildly less retina damage. Always nice.
mildly less retina damage, says the folks who have light-colored eyes. Well, you don't, but
Yeah, I do.
light-colored eyes down the road. Do you have light-colored eyes?
Yes.
What?
Like hazel green.
Oh, wow, a new discovery every day.
I always thought your eyes were brown.
It's the hazel. It depends on what I'm wearing.
Oh, it's because you're wearing black right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like opposite of that, wide eyes. I feel like I meant to write wild eyes though, because that's what happens to me. It looks
Crazy
wild
eyes.
when your eyes are wide. So actually, some people are like, okay, I have eyelashes on, I have eye makeup on, I should get my eyes really open. Actually, don't. If you think about it, a lot of people when they wear eyeliner, it's supposed to widen your eyes and make them look a little more open. So making your eyes like actually wider does not help you. It looks like that. Just saying.
Good times.
What's that old Tyra Banks thing?
Smizing.
Smizing.
You want to schmize?
Are you
Smile
That's smiling
with
with your eyes. Novocaine mouth, smile with your eyes.
Because sometimes if you smile with your mouth, say you've been taking a lot of pictures and you're just trying to hold that pose, sometimes you can smile with your mouth, but then your eyes don't quite line up. And then if you cover your mouth and look at the photo, you look very angry, but then you look at the smile and you're like, oh,
That's like me
that's
every
where it
day.
feels a little off.
Flat arms and legs. Same thing with the stiff postures.
Boring.
Put a bend in it.
A little space will help separate and make the photo a little more dynamic.
You want to
too.
create negative spaces. It's very flattering. Similarly, straight on poses are really great if you want to like be like, this is what my character looks like in a vacuum. They're great for like, I'm just showing you my build. But the reality is more natural. Like, how many times do you really look at a person straight on like this? Like never.
Yes.
The reality is a more natural.
Now,
Is
the
better.
only thing I can think that where a straight-on pose might be what you want is if you want a really strong power stance. That's where you can stand up.
You want to give us a power stance?
Yeah. So, and it's really uncommon. Most of the time, you're going to want some movement, some flexibility. The photo did not quite look so harsh. But say you have a really cool armor on something, you might just want one picture where you make kind of an A with your legs, you put a little space in between, and if you stand front and strong, that kind of gives off a really strong, intimidating look. But again, it can kind of be too much sometimes, so
Yeah, straight
you'll
on
have
is
more
really
depth when you turn.
best for intimidation. I also advise no gang signs. Unless it's in character, it kind of ends up looking a little tacky and also can be translated as offensive to people who you are sharing the photos with. And everybody's favorite is hunching. Most people, when they're relaxed, like you want to have a relaxed pose, but we all relax forward because we're tired human beings. So just like keep in mind when you pose, you want to be relaxed, but you want to put your shoulders back a little bit because then you're standing up straighter.
So I usually breathe in right before a photo. So it'll be the difference between sitting like this and rolling the shoulders back, bringing my collarbone up, bringing my neck up and over. Everything just feels a little bit more at ease.
And I mean, like,
Very.
I was just gonna ask, out of curiosity, for characters who have a noticeable like.
Oh, you
punch-
played that up.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
is there something to make it look intentional and in character rather than just I'm tired taking this photo shoot?
Yeah.
you can
Angle is gonna do a
dramatize
lot,
it. Yeah.
Angle is going to do a lot, so doing more of a top down could be very helpful as a photographer, looking like a little bit more down onto you. But if you have a little bit of a hunch, you have a lot of it of a hunch. Notice what I'm doing is two things. I'm turning my shoulder closer to you, so I'm really emphasizing, and the shoulder is now back as opposed to just going like this. Because when I go like this, I'm flattening my form. This gives me a more dynamic angle, and then I do something with my hands to really sell that I'm like feeble.
Okay.
Dynamic angles are great as a photographer too, if it's going to be something that might look a little flat normally.
If
Thank
you
you
were
so
a
much.
theater bean, play up the theater bean. Those of you who are theater beans, we always talk about do everything on the 3/4, as opposed to like you always do things on the 3/4 instead of a profile. Similarly, for when you're taking a photo, or if you're like supposed to be looking to a direction. If I try to do a photo where I'm looking to the this way, if I look to the this way, one of my eyes is going to look really terrifying because it's going to be mostly white. So instead of looking all the way this way, I'm going to look 3/4 of the way to my target. Similarly, just the other day, Joe and I were filming a TikTok.
I'm trying to be
We're
hip
both
and trendy,
TikTok,
okay?
like-
I'm trying.
We're neither of we're foreigners to TikTok. But one of the things that we were doing is we were two people coming together in profile, and we kept saying like, okay, remember 3/4 turn. We're gonna 3/4 turn.
We're going to inch our way in this way so
as
that we're
opposed
somewhat
to in
facing.
profile,
Yeah.
because it just looks better. You can see more of the face, and that generally reads better than a full-on profile.
You don't want the whites of your eyes to be most of your eyes.
I don't really know how to ask this question, like how to phrase it, but
I'm
it's
so
like,
into this already.
if you do your makeup a specific way to really change your face shape, but then you're like turning and you're losing your contouring, is there a way to like get both so you're not losing your hard makeup work, but you're still getting dynamics?
The word I hear a lot, or the phrase I hear a lot, is find your light. Prioritize your light, wherever that is. So if you're in a location and the lighting isn't good, don't try it. Don't spend your life trying to make the lighting work. Come back.
Yeah, a lot of the times the angles with your makeup, when you do special makeup like that, it'll be the lighting that helps either show it off or kind of hide that. And so sometimes you can still get dynamic angles by angling correctly against a light source. And a photographer can usually help assist with that as well.
If you're doing a special makeup though, and you're worried about that sort of thing, communicate that with the photographer, but then also ask if you can look at your photos on their viewfinder as you go along, so you can give notes to the photographer as you're going, like, I like this pose, but the lighting, this is where I want the lighting, because it's a lot easier to critique something that's in front of you rather than to try to paint a picture when you have literally nothing. So sometimes what I'll say is, I like this lighting, but my pose needs tweaking. Can we do that again? Or opposite, I'll be like, I like this pose, but the lighting's not doing it for me. Can we change that up? And most of my photographers respond really well to that, because at the end of the day, what that means is they're not going to waste their time editing a photo that you are not going to like. It's better to be like, this one's not doing it for me. Let's work harder to get the shot. And once we get the shot, it's less work for you because we have the shot.
So, finding your angles. I definitely, by the way, recommend like just kind of taking a light, like a ring light, and turning your face and seeing like where your makeup disappears for the look that you're looking for. And then when you're working with somebody, make sure that you don't go past the disappearing point. So experiment, you know, find where it disappears, and once you know that too, you'll go to it because you'll have practiced it. So it's kind of like making muscle memory.
You can also use your phone camera and just take a quick video of yourself at those different angles so that you can look at it a little easier when you're done.
That was me pretending with my phone.
It's not, people say it's silly, but it's not silly to sit there in your mirror and go over poses and poses and poses. Really, it's not.
It's research.
Especially if you're spending money on a photo shoot.
Your family's gonna be like, what are you doing? Posing in front of the mirror all the time. Research.
So yeah, get funky in the mirror. Just saying. Make faces, take selfies. Try tilting your head, try rotating your body.
Practice
Get
the Iron
motion.
Man pose. I don't know.
If you like action poses, do some kicks. See what kicks look better than others. I mean, do some punches, do some voguing, like Night at the Roxbury maybe.
I've heard some people will call it the hot dog hand. It's where you gently lay your hand out, you know, in a photo, you feel a little delicate, and imagine you're holding a hot dog. It gets your hand in the right shape. So like try things like that. You know, do you want to touch your hair to the side? Do you want to hold on to your shoulder? Does it flatten your body when you do that? Things like that.
My favorite, the 3/4 turn.
She's got 2 hot dogs.
Yes, I was hungry that day.
See? Yep, exactly.
Everybody wants a hot dog!
So this kind of touches on the don't stand straight forward, give yourself a little bit of a turn. It's way more flattering.
Look at how her eyes don't meet the camera for this particular shot.
But you can see my eyes.
She's probably looking if I'm gonna call that fire escape or the fire alarm. I'm gonna call the fire alarm the photographer right now. She's probably looking above and just slightly past. I tend to, when I take a photo where I'm looking directly at, I will look at the top of a photographer's head if I'm taking a photo directly on. But I love the look of up and ever so slightly up and over the photographer's head, because it gives this really ethereal look. It's fabulous.
Also though, don't find something that's far away and stare at it. Try to find something that's much closer.
In the midground.
Right, because if you look at things far away, your eyes get really wide,
And
kind of
glazed
wild
over.
looking, and glazed over. So if you're looking at things closer, think about this scientifically. Your pupils get bigger and smaller. When you're looking far away, you take in more light, so your pupils get bigger, thus your eyes get wider. So if you find something closer, your eyes have way more color to work with versus having like black, wild dots.
If you're a photographer, one of the best things I've always seen is I've seen my photographers, they'll have their camera frame, and then they'll be like, eyes up here, eyes are here, and they'll guide your eyes with their hand. And then my personal favorite is they'll take their hand, they'll say, this is your face. They'll turn, they'll rotate their hand with what they want your face to do, so you can catch that light, and it is remarkably intuitive when they pretend that you are the puppet. Yeah, you're all, some of you are doing it and I love it. But it is remarkably intuitive, and as a photographer, I impart this upon you, because sometimes you're trying to say like, move your head, tilt your head just slightly to the left, and then you end up saying, no, your other left. But if you could just do, whoop, people go, like, it's so easy. You don't even need words. Everyone's like, yeah, okay.
And it gives you that closer focal point too, so your eyes retain their color.
Is that so much of an issue when you're photographing someone with color contacts?
No.
I was gonna.
I mean, because your eyes can't really change
Your pupils can't
contacts.
change shape when you're wearing colored contacts. This is a really good question. But it's still something to be keenly aware of, because your eyelids will still micro adjust.
Yeah.
So it's just something to be aware of regardless. But color contacts, yeah, that is good
It's
point.
a good point, yeah. Our photography and modeling's best friend is the triangle.
Literally, it's this and this.
It angles. I try to make triangles in all of my poses.
Look at that triangle.
And I'm not talking harsh either. I'm talking like put your arm up and kind of see.
I'm making an angle with my shadow.
So if you look at the first versus the second, my straight on pose, already a no-no, has no angles. There's no negative space. Versus my first one, which is way more dynamic. Triangles will impose action or movement or fluidity.
Yeah, all of those
What are
words.
the words I want?
Not all of those words apply.
It's the most flattering, like your A stance. It's the most flattering shape for photography. You don't want to be a square.
It looks really great for your pose yourself, and it also makes the photo visually interesting to look at.
And if you think of the human body as triangles, you're like an upside down triangle here and an upside down, regular triangle here. So you can take that negative space and work around it.
Having some separation as well.
I did.
If I can, let me see if
Yeah,
I
show
can
us.
show off the difference
off.
a little bit. When you have your arm flat against your body, you lose a lot of the depth of shadow moving around your arm. Whereas if you separated it a little bit, it's not going to be as flat and pinched. So it depends if that matters to you, but for me, I don't want my arm to be quite so wide when it's against my body. I want it to pull out. It kind of can be a little slimming. It can make you feel more comfortable with it, and you'll get more shadow and more depth around the sides of yourself as well.
And you don't want to be a blob, so making those shapes pushes your body into a much more like dynamic form.
Unless you want to be a slime or something, I guess that
I
might be.
mean, yes.
Speaking
could
of
be a sign.
dynamic forms, you can even achieve dynamic forms at a very, very delicate level. We're talking about the head tilt.
The minimal amount of work you can do.
It's so easy to just take a picture and just go. It's weird how much more delicate it will make a photo. I'm not saying you do this for, if you're if you're Captain America and you are posing as Captain America, you keep that neck rigid. You keep your head on your neck. But if you're trying to do something very elegant, the head tilt goes a very long way. For those of you who were here earlier, this is what my students saw me in at class.
Also, I kind of want to see Captain America do a head tilt.
I mean, that would be a very different feel to Captain America. Very different vibe.
I think that would be too feminine.
It does give
Could
off
be
that
a
vibe, but
feminine Captain America.
yeah, why
A
not?
soft boy.
If they did a gender bend, maybe, but
Oh, I would pay money to watch to see a full-on Chris Evans interpretation doing a little. I'm like,
So something as well when you're doing your head tilts is sometimes it can be hard to know which angle you want to go with. That's where it's great to communicate with your photographer and say, hey, quick question, does it look better when I do this or that? And they'll be able to help know what your environment is behind you to help you angle in a way that'll be really flattering to the photo.
I love this one. I'm a drama queen, so exaggerating everything just comes naturally, I think.
and this is right. I was gonna say this is.
I was waiting
this
for
is
you
the
to
difference
throw some
between-
shade.
I would say this is the difference between hands on the hip versus hands on the hip and the hip is out. There's a huge difference in what tone you're conveying, but it also just reads cooler on photography film.
Also, if it's a struggle to do, you're doing it right.
Please don't hurt yourself.
But no, I mean within reason. So most poses, when you just take a picture and you're trying to do dynamic, unless you push it outwards, it's still a flat pose. So you could have like a killer pose and you could strike it, but if you don't really impose it, like push into it, it still translates flat. So if you're going for a dynamic shot, you want to push it outwards. Exaggerate it as best as you can within reason.
And sometimes it may feel very funky when you're doing it. Say you're really trying to lean into a pose forward. With the way your back is bending, it may feel very awkward. But sometimes that ends up working really well in the photo after.
And if you're trying to portray those like awesome anime characters, well, JoJo!
Said but true.
So let's narrow it down. We'll try to touch upon these in the short amount of time that we have left. Starting with a face, you can smile, you can show any kind of emotion you want, anger, hesitation, sadness, be
Really
silly,
play.
peeved. This photo actually took like 4 or 5 tries. She kept telling me to like growl, and I was like, hee.
Like, no,
And
growl.
she's like, Larcy, stop it. This. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, that's going to look terrible. And then I got it back, and I'm like, oh.
Now
I see now.
I see what you were saying
So-
about her.
I had to exaggerate it. Because just like doing it, thinking I was doing it wasn't enough. If you just kind of half do it, it looks really neat. But if you really get into it and push it out, that's what it ends up looking like. Believe it or not.
I believe it.
So, giving face. Posture check, where's your tongue? If you put your tongue in the top of your mouth, everybody's got a chin. Let's like be real, we all have it.
But it'll tighten those muscles a
By
little
putting
bit.
your tongue at the top of your mouth, it pulls that up and gives you a chin line, gives you that anime chin. Do your 3/4 turn, it works with your face too. You want to avoid the whites of your eyes. And hair check. Make sure your hair is where you want it to be. Wig, hair, whatever you're wearing on your head, make sure it is exactly where you want it before they snap the photo. And head tilt, if you're going to do it, just top of your head. Boop. And, you know, my final advice, remember to relax. If you are strained at any point or feeling anxious, it will reflect in your face. Whether you think it's there or not, it's there. As soon as your muscles tighten, you can see that pull in. Or you'll have a little wrinkle on your forehead if you're me. And just to be clear, smiling is valid. Everybody's going for like a model face, I guess, where it's kind of like plain Jane, there's no emotion there. Like, my favorite photos are the ones where people are laughing, especially in their cosplays. And people are like, I hate my smile. And I'm like, I actually love this photo the most because you look like you are having a good time. I'm going to let you do hands, the hands queen.
I really like hands. I don't have like a weird fixation with hands, but I like them in photography. Because especially when I'm doing elegant photography, I like to really like loosen up and try to make everything very slow motion and very like delicate. I often refer to it as forlorn or sad wrists or sad elbows. And I have yelled at Larcy, I'm like, forlorn elbows!
You know how hard it is to take photos with her?
Oh, because it's just me being like, make it forlorn!
I'm trying to be cool and she's like, forlorn! I'm like,
well, because it's the difference between this versus like this, like forlorn.
I'm like, forlorn?
Well, I like to act it out. I like to just believe that I'm in like a pool, like a swimming pool, and you know how hard it is to push air or water in a swimming pool. It's almost like Tai Chi, and I love doing those poses. I find they're very delicate, and I also find that I bring my 2 fingers together and let these fingers drag the pointer and the pinky drag behind me, and it's very fun to just gently caress your face with these spread fingers. Hands can be a really fun way to do poses, and they can really bring out the cool things in a cosplay, so like don't be afraid to go crazy with it. I know that I just looked like a lunatic just now, but any one of those would have been a bangering photo, I promise.
Yeah, a lot of people when they're taking photos forget that they have hands. I'm not joking, because they'll put their hands down, they won't do anything dynamic with it. They're too focused on the rest of their pose
But you could
to
also
remember
do
that you can
power
open
poses.
your right. You can open your hands and do things with it.
Magic hands.
Jazz hands.
If you've got a cape or a jacket, you can pull it gently to the side. Try and keep the fingers in focus so your hand doesn't look like it's got caught off by anything.
Right.
When you also communicate with your photographer, maybe that you want to make sure your hands are in frame. So they're usually pretty good about that as a photographer. That they'll try and keep everything in frame so nothing looks cut off. So.
And if you don't know where to put your hands when you're trying to pose, just touch a part of your cosplay. Like highlight something. Whatever you touch is what the eye is going to go to. So if you want people to admire your buttons,
That
put your
photo
hand-
was, I put makeup on my face, notice me. Dude.
I mean, also she had these like crazy hands.
I had crazy little extendo handos.
You know how hard it was to pose those? I would like get them and then they go boop.
Because they were extenders for your fingers, so they respond to what your fingers were doing at the joint level. So it would be like, if I would have my fingers bent and then these fingers would be bent down and this one would just be like, whing! It's and I could just make it I would move one little, one joint and it would just immediately bring the finger to it. It was wild.
It was straight up just exaggerated.
It was wild. I loved it. This photo makes me happy.
So just remember, hands, don't know where to put them, touch your cosplay. It sounds weird, but do it. Things to avoid, our favorite photo in the whole wide world.
We actually hate
Straight
it.
on, no triangles, just look at the camera.
I look so. I have like. You can
I
see
look
my belly
upset.
button.
And you just look like
Oh,
you
you're not
wanna
that
like.
bad.
No, but I wasn't that good.
You can see that we're both strained. We were both actually very uncomfortable in those costumes.
And here's a situation where the photographer we were working with wasn't at the time as comfortable with doing dark shoots with like neon. So he was trying something new. We were trying something new, and all parties agreed. We're like, this was maybe not our best effort, but like A plus for trying, everybody. A plus for trying, and we have fully come to terms with that. We are full circle about that. But it's something that we tried. At the time, we were not asking to look at the back of the camera, and I think those were one of those moments where we wish we had, because I would have been like, oh, can we do this again, but like, can we 3/4 turn it? And that will look so much better.
And it was also kind of a symmetry fail. We were trying to do symmetrical posing and neither of us was there.
Right, neither of us could see what the photographer was seeing, and I don't know if the photographer was thinking we were doing symmetrical posing, so it was just like a failure to communicate.
This was our attempt at an April Fool's joke many years ago.
We posted as each other's cosplay, that was the joke.
And just to say, as a person that wasn't on the shoot, I look at that photo and I think that's a good photo. But I think what they're trying to convey as well is that you can kind of make it an even more dynamic photo if you want.
Right, as literally, it was okay,
It translates flat.
but we knew that we could achieve greatness.
We have achieved
A
greatness.
little bit of tweaking. Look at how cute you
So
is.
now it's buddy yaddy yaddy, because I love RuPaul.
We're gonna have to lightning through it.
Oh yeah. So if you can't love yourself, how the hell you gonna love somebody else?
Amen. Thank you.
Well, I'm screwed.
Full body posing. Put it all together. Make your angles. Bend your joints. Shift your weight. Lean. Don't hide your legs. You don't want to be a tree trunk. You got 2 legs, not 1. Don't slouch. Remember, put your shoulders back.
Unless slouching's in character.
Or if you want to really exaggerate it, then exaggerate your slouch. Push your pose outwards. And motion is always good. Just make sure that your photographer is ready for it. I love how Joe Fate put the same pose. So we're like with my
Angles,
blades.
movement, not just a straight up and down, you're putting a little dynamic posing in.
We got some triangles going. Look at your elbow and your leg. And
do
I'm
notice on
making-
this one, the photographer even got in on the angling to really
with the
punch
wall.
that. Yeah.
So everything that Joe Fate has done pulls your eyes to them. Group posing. This is
I
actually,
don't think we have enough time for
Wait.
group posing. It is literally
well,
2
we have
o'clock.
this room. We're not going anywhere.
Fair, they might, so we're gonna have to go quick.
We can go quick.
Okay.
Group posing is the hardest thing you can do in cosplay, in my opinion, because everybody's doing something and usually it's not the same thing as everybody else. So make sure when you go into a group shoot that you have all discussed how you want to go about things. You've practiced translating your poses into each other. You want to flow together, not away, so keep your gaps minimal. And actually, the closer you get to your cohorts, the better it is, because any kind of gap makes that picture look like
Disjointed a little bit.
yeah. For example, with our KDA group down here, we were almost all together, but there's a small gap between our Jolteon and Flareon that actually pulls the picture just a little bit too much.
But otherwise they love it.
nobody would notice unless we, pointed it out.
Which we just did, haha!
And prop dynamics,
Oh, yes, I know.
just like as a quick, don't get lost in your props. You want to angle it with your body and not cover your body. You want to keep it close and interact with it, but you don't want it to cover you up, so you want to use it to highlight your outfit. So try to keep it in the shot, try to keep it against your body, but not in the same space. And motion. Again, communicate with your photographer. Don't start swinging unless they're ready. I have made that mistake. This poor Lazaro.
With props, it can really help to practice those poses ahead of time. Know what's going to hit things around you when you pick it up. Make sure you get all the details you want in it by practicing in the mirror. And it can also help to find some reference photos of other people holding large props for ideas.
Any quick questions before we wrap up? Go for it.
Are there any resources you'd recommend for trying to figure out posing?
My favorite resource is the whole and the entirety of the interwebs. I know this sounds stupid, but like if you Google search like modeling poses, that's a great way to like just get ideas. Magazines are tried and true. I know that sounds dumb, but fashion magazines, if you're looking for fashion poses, look at superheroes. Like these are paid people who have been paid, and like their coaches have like micro studied how their bodies need to be. Even wrestling, especially wrestling. Like go to the moon and back with references as best as you can. Just looking at what the pros are doing, because that is going to help you.
Also helping, a thing that'll help with that as well is, Googling other people, look at the character you want to cosplay, Google that character and Google that cosplay of that character. See how other people have done it, what you like, what you don't like.
Pinterest. That's my favorite.
Yep.
I love
Great.
Pinterest.
I would have to agree, especially when you want to draw Pokemon.
If you're interested.
Any others?
Pinterest is good for ideas. It's really bad with sourcing images that you find on there. Just if you're using images from Pinterest.
Yeah, we're not
Oh.
suggesting that
Yeah.
you want to rip images. We're just saying that
It's more like
ideas
inspiration.
for photos.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
So with Pinterest, I went to college for computer animation from Full Sail.
Oh, cool.
One of the biggest things that they said, definitely with Pinterest, not only can you find poses, you can also find light references, anything like that, which was always a really good help for that.
If you're very lucky, it'll reference, the Pinterest link will reference back to the original
Yes.
artist, and then you can browse through that person's style and things and get more inspiration. Unfortunately, Pinterest is a little bit of a crapshoot as far as tagging the original sources.
I also, and this is gonna sound dumb, use TikTok. I kid you not, do like the hashtag cosplay poses, and there's always someone out there who's done something and it actually looks pretty good. TikTok is actually full of a lot of good information amongst the garbage, unfortunately, but it's there because I actually have gotten a lot of inspiration from some bigger cosplayers on there who have good reputations, who do those types of quick tutorials. And I'll tell you, my attention span these days is like 30 seconds, and they can hit those like tips out in less than that. So I'm like, oh good, I'm good, let's go. Like, any other questions? Go ahead.
So like when you're taking photos like in your room and all you have is a ring light,
Yeah.
sometimes it just doesn't come out right. Can you tips for that?
Lift your ring light up. Don't have it straight on, lift it up a little bit. It gives your face more shape. It gives you more light on your face and eliminates the shadows that you might have. So it gives you more of a glow. I've made the mistake with my ring light having it straight on, but I find that when I lift it, it gives me that lighting that I want. It also works really well with product photography. If you lift it, don't do straight on lighting. And you can do the sides too, if you're trying to go for like a more dynamic. But make sure that if you do sides, it's still lifted like
It also-
eye level.
It can also help to, if you want more lighting than just what the ring light can provide, try and time it for the brightest parts of the day where you're really getting natural light coming in.
Yeah, as a baby photographer, I say that the best thing that you can use is natural lighting. Once you start getting into synthetic lighting and manipulating of lighting, that's really difficult stuff. But the sun is really good. I would say the best times would be an hour after sunrise or an hour before sunset are going to be your best times. Those are referred to as the golden hours for getting good images, like really gels well with a lot of people's skin tones. That being said, times to avoid would be the high heat of the days where the sun is at its peak, because it's going to cast some really awful shadows. So if you can do like some morning photography on overcast days, or some like, late afternoon photography, outdoor, natural lighting has always been my favorite for even just getting selfies, because I'm like, I look like I'm like telling a ghost story when I do self-photography in like the nighttime with just a ring light, because it's casting weird shadows all over my face.
And the only thing I'd mention about noon lighting is it can be very harsh to go out right in the thick of the day, to go outside and try and take photos. But if you are inside and you're trying to get that light through your windows, that if you're not directly in that light,
Diffused
but back
light.
a little bit, diffused, that time of day is great to help brighten up your indoor space.
Any kind of white light is going to wash out your face and take the color out of it too. So when I do ring light stuff, my ring light has 3 settings. I can do like a natural light, a cool, and a warm. So I'll do natural and then I'll turn it almost all the way down, because phones these days are actually pretty good about correcting with the photography lighting. So if you turn it down, turn it to natural, that'll also help a lot.